Please do not turn off your radio, but turn up the volume on your receiver as high as it can go.
I want everybody in the place to be. Now make some noise if you're down with me. 1, 2, 1, 2.
We got a big broadcast to do here.
Welcome to Social Disruption, the show that shatters comfort zones, flips the script, and delivers unfiltered truth. I'm your host, Farrah, and joining me is my co-host.
I'm Cheyenne, and together we're here to disrupt the airwaves with real conversations, no filters, no apologies.
Trigger warning, this is a show where a spine isn't optional and the truth cuts deep. Let's get into it. We have a wonderful guest on the show tonight. In the city of endless reinvention where neon dreams light up the desert sky, there's one show that's been captivating audiences longer than any other of its kind. But before the spotlight, before the stage at the Four Queens Hotel, there was a little boy in Detroit facing battles no child should face. Today's guest transformed trauma into triumph, not just becoming Vegas's longest-running hypnotist, but using his gift to help others find their own light in the darkness. His show, Hypnosis Unleashed, has earned every accolade Vegas has to offer, but it's his story from victim to Vegas headliner that will truly leave you spellbound. Please welcome a man who proves that magic isn't just in the show he performs, but in the human capacity for resilience. Kevin Lepine. Thank you so much for being here, Kevin.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me on.
Before we dive deep, what would young Kevin think if he could see Vegas Kevin now?
So I'm a big believer in the butterfly effect. I believe if you change one thing, you change everything. So it's weird if I could tell the younger version of me, one day you'll be in Vegas headlining Hypnosis Unleashed, and you will be the longest running hypnosis show. There's no way I could explain it to that kid in a way that he wouldn't understand it. And I don't know if he wouldn't screw it up if I could have given him that advice.
That's a great way to answer it. I love that. So let's start with your early life, Kevin. Take us back to Detroit. What are your earliest memories?
All right, so my earliest memories would be with my mom. I was adopted, the adoption agency. I was in foster care for 1 month. My birth mother kept me until I was 5 months old. The adoption agency put me in my mom's arms on Christmas Eve when I was 6 months old. So I flew in and out of the system. It was great. When she adopted me, she was married to somebody, and they got divorced within a couple of years. So most of my early memories are with me and my mom.
I was going to get into that. When did you first learn that you were adopted, and how did that affect your sense of identity growing up?
So I always knew. My mom made it really, really clear. And when she married the man who would be my dad, they both were always just very upfront and very honest. I don't think it had any negative impact on me at all. I mean, since I always knew there was no surprise, and I always knew that my mom really, really made the choice that she wanted to be a mom. And I also knew that my birth parents, I mean, like I said, I was adopted at 5 months. Somehow I knew instinctively that that was a really hard choice for them to make. Because of that, I've had an amazing life with parents who loved me dearly.
Were there any moments where you were starting to feel like you didn't belong?
Not that I didn't belong, but there were plenty of moments where there is one joy that only being hypnotized really allows you. And that's that. Remember when your mom, your dad, or your siblings really embarrassed you in a situation? I could honestly say I'm not related to these people. I always had that card in my back pocket.
That's a good card, Kevin.
So now in your book, you open up about the abuse from your father. When did that begin?
My mom's first husband. And I try not to focus too much on him because of how young I was. And I don't have both sides of that story, but I do know the effect that he had on my mother. I know that he threatened and intimidated me quite a bit. I know that my mother went through physical abuse with him, and that's why she left. And in hindsight, I was young. I didn't understand a lot of what was going on, especially in that dynamic. And it was just a very uncomfortable dynamic between my mom and my mom's first husband. And I never really felt bonded or close to him, which led to when I was in fourth grade, me telling him that I wanted my dad to adopt me, that I wanted him out of my life, which was also a really tough thing to do because I was about 10. And when you're 10, that's soul wrenching.
If I might add, I had that family dynamic where my mother was the abuser to me. So, my question to you, when a parent abuses you like that, I constantly had the question, God, why do you put people like this on earth that does this to you? And I've gotten answers like, well, God gives free will and this is just what happens. But did you ever ask yourself that question, Kevin, and ever get an answer to it?
So, if I can turn this around on you for a second, since your mother was your abuser, did you find yourself looking for maternal figures throughout your life?
Yeah, I always wanted to go to my friends' houses because I wanted to spend the night and see what it was like to have a mother treat their kids normal.
Yeah, because I spent a lot of my life, and I mean, my dad, the man who raised me, my dad is very important. I love him dearly. He is my dad. But I think because of that abuse, one of the things I went to is I was kind of always looking for more of a father figure, an older brother figure, somebody who I could find safety in that role because I didn't quite know what it was. And as far as that whole thing of why does God put these people there? The time, as much as I wanted to be angry about why do I have this person? Then there's the other side of the coin of, well, what about these positive people I have in my life? And I kind of looked at one as a counterbalance to the other. Now, when I'm saying that, I looked at them as a counterbalance to each other. If you are in an abusive situation, if you're being abused mentally, physically, emotionally, go and seek help. Do not sit there and go, oh, well, there's people who care about me. If you're in a dangerous situation, go and get help for that situation. But also sometimes when we want to get mad at God or the universe, one of the great things I've learned doing hypnosis is there are two emotions you can't feel at the same time, which are gratitude and anxiety. The more we focus on gratitude, the less anxiety we have. The more we focus on our anxieties, the less gratitude we have. I'm not sure if that answered the question really well, though, for you.
Yes, it helped me think differently about my situation back then. So, where did you find safe spaces or other safe people to gravitate to?
I'm sure we'll talk about the abuse in school. The weird thing, and we'll expound on this, my one safe space was reading. That could always take me to where I wanted to be, to the point where books became more important to me than people for a good part of my early adolescence. But because of the reading would later go into me finding a safe space on the stage to grow and develop as well.
I can definitely see that for you, for sure. Go ahead, Shane. I know you have some questions too.
Kevin, you talked about books being a safe space or maybe even an escape, a break for you mentally. The fact that you then went on to write a book, which I'm sure has helped countless of other. Were there any adults in your life who noticed what was happening or tried to help, tried to step in there?
My mom and dad realized the situation with my mom's first husband. They saw it better than I did. And they were able to piece together some things that really helped remove the major abuse, the abuse in school. They didn't understand. My generation barely understands it. Thankfully, the generation after me, the generations following, are really understanding how destructive bullying is. They're really learning that bullying isn't just, oh, you got pushed down on the playground. Bullying is, I feel excluded. Bullying is, I don't feel that there's a place where I'm accepted. Bullying is, I feel that I am destroyed and alone and therefore not worthwhile.
Can you give us some examples, Kevin, of what happened to you in school for our listeners that might have a child maybe going through the same thing, or maybe there's someone that listens that is that child in middle school, high school? Some examples that you went through and how you got through those situations.
For many years, I didn't get through those situations. And let's just start with a real easy form of bullying. And that's just somebody, teasing you, making fun of your name. Well, I didn't understand teasing. I didn't understand that that was a way to have fun. So I reacted negatively to it. It hurt me. Classmates saw that it hurt me and they realized they could push that button if they wanted. And if they could push this button, they could push another button. And that would upset me as well. And if those two buttons worked, then they could push a third one. And the thing is, what happens, especially when you're young, is, these cracks start opening up and people start seeing where they can take advantage of you. And it grows from simple teasing to directly picking on to having multiple people picking on you at once. And then it escalates into physical abuse because once 3 or 4 bullies realize nobody's going to stick up for you, then you're really in trouble.
Then they all come running. I had that
Yes.
in my school. You see my name, Farrah. Well, who was I
Mhm.
named after? I was named after the actress Farrah Fawcett. So in middle school, it was Farrah Spigot, Farrah Leaking Faucet. It just kept
Mhm.
going. Granted, it never got to a physical point. So my heart goes out to you for anything that you experienced. I think even if it did, to be honest, the fact that I was getting it at home from a person that was supposed to love me, it probably wouldn't have affected me as much because throughout my life, I had gone through domestic violence. When your mom does it, then you let everyone do it.
It also sounds silly. Like if you and I as adults talk about kids making fun of our names, we
Right.
sound like we're being ridiculous and petty. Except it's not about making fun of the name. It's about a group of people saw that making fun of your name hurt you. And instead of backing off from hurting you, they doubled down on it.
Exactly. Did anyone in the school, counselors, teachers, did anyone get involved?
Oh my God. Oh, the worst thing in the universe. I would get picked on, I would get beaten up, whatever. And then the teacher, would immediately have this conversation about how you don't treat people that way. And because they had just treated me that way, they knew what it was about, and that meant I got it again. But thankfully, that was my experience. I'm 49 years old. So we are literally hopping into the Wayback Machine, almost 40 years. Thankfully, we've progressed.
Oh, for sure. Yes.
Thankfully, now when a teacher starts talking about bullying, there's an immediate reaction. I do remember one time in school, I remember shooting my mouth off. There was an African American girl in our class, and one day the teacher starts this lecture about skin color. And mind you, this is third, fourth grade, right? And I remember directly turning at the class. I had a bad stuttering problem. This was one of the first times I didn't stutter in front of the entire class, was going, who called her a name? Because I instinctively knew if the teacher was talking about this, just like when she talked about bullying, I knew exactly what happened. And I just went off. Who called her a name? Who said it? And the funny thing was, nobody would speak. Nobody would admit it. And so all of a sudden, that moment, whoever had said it experienced shame and fear because now they were being called out. And I think we've reached a level now where what I did at that young age, and I wouldn't have done it had I not been in that position where, oh, it's one of these lectures because somebody else got hurt. And I think now we've reached the stage in society where everybody realizes, hey, if you can't own up to your actions, then maybe your actions were wrong. And I think we know new ways of presenting.
Yes.
Kevin, as the three of us sit here discussing these things, I was also teased. My name is a unique name.
Mhm.
My father is in the entertainment industry, and I was called a liar. I was lying that my father was an actor. Is Dusty Rhodes the wrestler your dad? Right?
Mhm.
So there was a lot of that. Now, in my adult life, my adult career, it all centers on positive behavioral interventions and supports trauma-informed care and restorative practices. So I become that quote unquote safe space for students who are experiencing bullying and different forms of harassment. So when you talk about how much we've shifted, you're 100% correct. We have shifted. The fact that we can kind of form bonds around trauma. I want to know from you, how were you able to maintain hope during these very dark, very traumatic moments in your life as a child?
I gave up on hope. I really did, which is why I retreated into books. Books were safe. Books couldn't hurt me. Books could introduce me to friends because I didn't have them yet. If you don't mind me asking, what kind of acting did your father do?
My dad has been in the industry for over 60 years, mostly when I was younger, television, a couple of movies. He didn't like to be away too long on location while I was younger.
Not necessarily leading, but like character. The reason I'm bringing this up is this what's so hard for kids to understand? And I grew up in Detroit, so I'm going to turn this around a little bit. Kids don't understand. There's a lot more actors than George Clooney. There's a lot more actors than Christopher Reeve. In Detroit, there were a ton of musicians who had full-time jobs, but they were the backup or the second backup singer. And like any kid's going to believe, oh, your mom or dad is like the second backup singer for Bob Seger. One, they wouldn't understand what that meant.
Right.
But if your dad isn't the lead in the movie, well, then he's not really an actor. And it's just kids' ignorance and insecurity. There's a great story about Henry Cavill, Superman, going to his nephew's school and walking into the classroom to pick his nephew up for lunch because the entire class, including the teacher, had told this kid he was a liar for saying that Superman was his uncle.
Oh, I would
Yeah,
have
so-
loved to have been in that class to see that reaction.
Yep.
Interestingly enough, I'm sitting here just kind of grinning. My father did something similar to that because we have a very famous person in our inner circle, our chosen family, and his parents were my godparents, and he signed an autograph directly to me, and my dad came in to my class to show everybody, and they knew that it bothered me when they questioned me, similar to what you had experienced, and Farrah too. When they know those triggers, they'll do them over and over again. It becomes a very vicious cycle.
Yes, the wound gets rawer, but
Yep.
like you were pointing out, Kevin, we are starting to get accountability. People are starting to be accountable for what they do and say.
I do feel the need to step in here and talk about my mom and dad again for a second. So my mom was very loving, but didn't know how to deal with the situation. My dad has been a recovering alcoholic my entire life. And the up and the down there is, and he was also a railroad engineer, so he was gone for days, much like a truck driver's schedule. But my dad was always honest with me. And I always knew if I needed something from him, I could ask him and he would tell me the truth, whether I wanted it or not. But the advantage of that was at least I had one parent who could really give me a grounding in reality. And at least I somewhat understood that I didn't need to listen to these people. But unfortunately, all that taught me was to just lose feeling for myself, because that's what you do eventually. It's impossible to not care about what 20 other people are doing to you. So you just stop caring about the result on your end.
And that kind of goes into the mental health part of your life, Kevin. I can remember the day that I realized I was going through a mental health struggle. But when did you first notice that your mental health was struggling?
I couldn't talk. I had a stutter that was so bad I could not communicate. I could not do interpersonal conversation. And this is always what amazed me. You give me a script, you give me something to read, I could have read it in front of 1,000 people and not flinch. I couldn't talk interpersonally. I couldn't communicate. And any emotion I had was raw and untempered.
Would you say like numb?
I started to get numb in 8th grade when I lost it. Just totally lost my temper as a kid. Probably one of the more physical moments of my life. And then in 9th grade, honestly, they dehumanized me so much in 9th grade that was when It wasn't even a question of depression or anything else. I missed so many school days because I was quote unquote sick. I didn't realize I was making myself sick. But then, yeah, the summer after ninth grade was literally, I had to make a choice whether I wanted to live or die.
I realized mentally it was about the same time as you. And I think why for me, it just boils me with rage just talking about it now. But my mom was so awful of a person. When I hit ninth grade high school, those are like your best years coming up. She was beating me up until the day I graduated, to where, I mean, since this is a show about truth, she would beat me in the mornings where I would urinate my pants and she would still send me on the bus into school. She ruined my high school years. And that's when I can remember my mental health was struggling, not so much of what she was doing to me. It was me having to try to cover up the disgrace that I felt.
The thing that I've mentioned to people working in school and working with kids is, in hindsight, when I got to 10th grade, I wish I would have understood what I know now, because I saw so many people who were involved in different clubs and activities. And everybody at school was so proud of them. Oh, you do this. And nobody realized, oh, you're doing all these things so you don't have to go home yet. I've noticed, and I'm hoping that's something that gets seen in the schools more often now, is some of these kids over participate in school to not have to go home.
That's why, in my opinion, it was the wrong call when COVID happened, the schools shutting down, because kids that were being abused were now being abused full time at home.
Yeah, that scenario's so much harder. A lot of schools misjudge this, especially because, oh, you're a cheerleader. That means you don't have any problems. You're such a great student. You couldn't possibly do all of this if things were bad at home. No, I'm doing these things because things are horrible at home. Thankfully, I always avoided drugs. I was compulsive as hell. And my dad being an alcoholic, drugs and alcohol didn't do it for me. As soon as I discovered gambling, oh, now I found a great way to be destructive. And it's funny because when you're in G, my name's Kevin. I'm a compulsive gambler. And I've often said I could save so much time just by going, hi, I'm Kevin. I'm compulsive, because it didn't matter what area of my life we were talking about. It was compulsive, everything. When you're abused, when you have that level of anger, it creates some different compulsions. And a mentor of mine, Jeff McBride, he dealt with anger from when he was younger. And he said the best thing I've ever heard about it. He said, anger is rocket fuel for the rest of your life, but it doesn't have a guidance system.
That's a good one.
Anger will propel you and push you to do 1,000 things that anybody else would have quit. But there's no guidance system. There's no realizing the damage you're doing as you're doing it.
Anger sometimes fuels us for the better.
It really does. But until you add that guidance system to it, it also forces you down very destructive behaviors.
So for you, that addiction that you had, that compulsion, how did that affect your relationships?
Oh, it affected everything. Ironically, one of my best friends from high school is a very respected addiction therapist. And he will start off a lot of his major lectures and major conventions. There'll be a slide on the screen that just says, no one knows you better than you know yourself. And the next slide just says, then why were you the last person to know you had a problem? And for people who laugh, they get it. For people who don't laugh, it's like, okay, those are the ones who still don't get it yet. That compulsion, that need to fill destroyed so many relationships. It took me a long time to understand that relationships and ownership weren't the same thing. I thought that because I was in a relationship, it was supposed to fill every part of me, and I was wrong. I thought that not being in a single relationship and being polyamorous would fill that. It didn't. I thought anytime I put my ego out there, especially being a performer, my ego could justify a lot of things. But it wasn't until I was 35 that I finally realized I needed help.
So did you feel that you had to always show the best of you because of everything that you went through in your life to kind of justify who you knew you were?
Yes. And To be completely honest, I only dated broken people because only broken people would want to be around me because I was broken. And when two broken people get together for a minute, it's anesthetic. For a minute, it takes away all the pain. I often tell my wife that had she met me before therapy, she would not have liked me. And before therapy, I would have never understood exactly how amazing she was.
Okay. I got some tears going on.
Same over here. Wow, Kevin, you definitely have hit a nerve in a good way. So, what was that rock bottom moment? What was that turning point that made you finally say, I need help?
There were two moments in my life. There was when I was 15 and there's when I was 35. And let's just talk about the 35-year-old Kevin deciding he needs to go to GA. I had gotten out of a very bad relationship and I moved to Vegas. I'm gambling and I am not having fun. And I had always, in hindsight, I had always had a gambling problem. I just never chose to see it that way. I never had a gambling problem. I just had a money problem. If I'd had more money, I could have won gambling, right? But there was a moment, and it was this thank God moment where every bet I was putting down, my brain started going, doesn't this feel like when it felt like you were fighting with your ex? Didn't this feel like you were when you did this negative thing? Doesn't this feel like when you did this negative thing? And I saw all of my bad choices line up. I could see him in a straight line. Like I said, my dad had been in AA forever. So I knew what it meant to go to a meeting. And there's nothing harder than going to that first meeting. But I realized if I could quit gambling, then maybe I could quit doing all of this other horrible stuff to myself. I went to my first meeting. One of the values of any of the group therapy, any of the different anonymous meetings is the realization that you're not alone. That no matter what you think you've done that is so bad, just about everybody else in that room has done the same thing. You can tell the worst thing you've done, and people in that room are going to chuckle. And they're chuckling not because they're laughing at you. They're chuckling because, oh, yeah, I remember that. And when you realize you're not alone, and you realize that all of these people grew from where you are right now, if you accept that you can grow, you can, and it makes a big difference.
You can grow and you can heal.
Anything you need healed, you've got to work on healing yourself. Nobody else is going to do it for you. Let's just talk for a second about me not killing myself at 15, because this is where a lot of things start to change. I'm 15. I just left 9th grade. I was in all boys high school. I had been beaten in the showers. I had been literally pushed under the bleachers and spit on by my entire class. I'm done. I've got nothing left. My parents decided they're going to put me in public school the next year. And now all I can see in my mind is this class is going to be so much bigger and there's going to be girls. I'm dead. I can't do this. And I was ready to kill myself, and thank God I didn't. And instead of killing myself, I had a God-given moment where I pulled out a piece of paper. I wrote a list of everything I hated about myself, which was a really long list. I made a list of things I liked about myself, which was very short, and a list of things I wanted to be. And I prayed all night long, and I'm like, I need to make this change or else. And then I fell asleep, like just comfortably fell asleep. I started working towards that goal. And in 10th grade, I met my first real group of friends. And it's funny because my first group of friends let me do something stupid. And this is going to sound weird on audio, but and it's going to sound weird because I'm snapping my fingers. In reality, I was tapping something. My friends let me do this. They let me meter out every syllable until I could speak. And in hindsight, what miracle is it to find a group of 15 and 16-year-old kids that will give you that space?
That's beautiful.
Yeah, it was a miracle.
Transformative power. Absolutely.
Amazingly, just having that space for my friends to explain, we want to hear you, gave me a sense of value I had never had before. And that gave me more confidence to pursue more in acting. Acting got me into performing. When I was 16 years old, I got picked up by an entertainment company, doing costume characters for kids' birthday parties. That led into doing magic when I was 20. 20 was when I first started working around hypnotists. And then I got into a course for social workers to learn how to do it. Because at the time, there's no place to learn how to do it on stage. I wanted to make sure I was doing it right. And now in hindsight, once again, nobody becomes a therapist if they don't want to fix themselves. So in hindsight, I will also say I got really interested in hypnosis to figure out what was going on in my brain too.
And how did you start interweaving that into your life to try to help the way that you felt?
Here's the number one way your brain works. On the count of 3, whatever you do not think of a pink elephant. 1, 2, 3. Yeah, you had no choice, did you?
Pink elephant. I got a pink
Yeah,
elephant.
it pops right in there. As soon as I tell you not to think of something, it's the only thing you can think of. If I say think of something you like more than elephants, you can think of anything. So if you use hypnosis to lose weight, it's not about, I don't want to think about eating. It's, I want to think about things that I like to eat that are healthy for me. I want to think about eating slower, because when I eat slower, I eat less. It's not, I want to think about not smoking. I want to think about why I want to live a healthy lifestyle. And instead of focusing on not doing something, you're focusing on little steps and little achievements that lead to the big goal.
Kevin, quickly, because we spoke about way back when we first started this conversation, how different things are in schools now. And in my profession, since I am in the more clinical field, when we talk about behaviorism, we talk about having people change, and parents especially, and adults change the way that they speak to children. Because if you tell a child, don't touch that, don't run, do that, right?
Touch it, run, touch it, run. That's all they hear.
Even with my own children who are now 15 and 11, whenever I'm speaking with them, it's walking seat in the house instead of don't run through the halls, right? So it's interesting for myself to connect that to what you're talking about with hypnosis, because I've never thought of it like that.
Yes.
It's not about quitting smoking. It's about wanting to extend your life, wanting to be healthier. And the same with the weight loss. You gave me a very nice aha moment there, Kevin. I thank you for that.
The same with gratitude, the same with everything. When we focus on the accomplishment, it's the best way to go. When we focus on what we want to achieve, we get that guidance system that we were talking about. And I don't believe anymore that you can fake it till you make it, except in one category, and that's your speech. I think that the way we talk to people, if you want to talk to people in a better, more positive way, fake it, because you're going to fake it for 100 times and you're going to grit through your teeth and you're going to overthink about how to do it. When you get to that 101st time, all of a sudden you realize you're communicating the way you want to communicate instinctively.
The therapy that I do is EMDR, which it's all about hearing.
So you probably know of William Arundel.
Yes. Yeah.
My best friend since high school.
That's wild. No way. Okay.
The reason I bring this up for all of the listeners, let me explain it really, really simply, which is we've all entered in and out of the state of hypnosis. It's a natural state. You go through it before you fall asleep at night. You go through it when you wake up in the morning. It's just that moment where you're perfectly relaxed. You can still hear the world around you. You're just kind of drifting off into your own dream. It's that moment when you're driving, it's late at night, and you're on autopilot, and you know you were focused on the road, but you don't remember if you passed that stop sign. It's that moment when you're daydreaming so much that while you're aware of the world around you, the daydream is more important.
Yes, it's really weird. I always get like a tingling sensation, or you kind of feel like you're going to fall off a cliff sometimes.
Or that feeling where you jump up because it felt like you were falling and you know you weren't falling, but your body, okay. Now, let me switch this into the therapy side of it. And even what I do when I use it for my comedy show. And my goal when I hypnotize people in my comedy shows, I want to make you look like a star. I want to make you look great. You're going to laugh. You're going to think, this guy's going to give birth. These guys are going to become showgirls. It's fun and it's funny. But I learned this a long time ago. If I had to sum up hypnosis in one word, it's cooperation. If you don't want me to hypnotize you, I can't hypnotize you. And then on the other side of it, if you're not comfortable working with me, you're never going to be comfortable enough to go into that state. Working with Dr. Richard Nongard, he came up with a term. And I said, how do you feel about this term for hypnosis? And he went, oh, it's not that I like that term, it's that I'm using it from now on. On the therapy side, I came up with an idea that said direct consensual suggestion. Because in hypnosis, there's always been direct suggestion. But what I came up with was called direct consensual suggestion, which is before you enter into that hypnotic state, we're going to talk exactly about the suggestion you want. So that way, when we put you there, you know exactly what you want to get out of it, which opens you up more to wanting to do it and wanting to experience it. Because even consciously, you've just said, yes, that's exactly the suggestion I want.
Okay. So, with that being said, what was your first attempt hypnotizing like?
There is the number one way to get free tickets to my show is if you can reach out to me and tell me where you saw me in the earlier mid 90s. I'm like, oh, I promise it's gotten way better here. Here's 2 free tickets. I am so sorry about what you had to say. You have to have a sense of confidence. You have to have the knowledge. You have to have all of this. And honestly, I didn't like hypnosis shows because most hypnotists I saw said, I'm a jerk who wants to make you look like an idiot. I had the option of doing my show for 6 months in New Orleans. 6 months turned into 5 years. And when I was down there in New Orleans, I got to work with a bunch of great performers. And their question to me was this: if your show could do or say anything, what do you want it to say and do? I said, I want my hypnosis show to simply say, I have something fun and interesting to share with you. And if you walk up here, I'm going to make you look like a star. And that's what the show became. And then the show just grew and grew and grew and take off. Because if you volunteer for my show, if you are on my stage, not everybody in the audience knows who you are, but they all know one fact about you they'll never forget, which is, oh my God, that could have been me. So if you look awesome, everybody goes, oh, you know what, we should go back and next time I might volunteer.
My only experience with hypnosis was on a cruise, but people were quacking like ducks, pretending to be quarterbacks, throwing imaginary footballs. As I watched everyone laughing, I had a high school flashback. It felt like the people on stage were being laughed at, like they were the butt of the joke. How do your shows differ from that?
I don't like cringe television, and I've never liked cringe comedy. And just about anybody who's gone through abuse will tell you the same thing. Cringe physically hurts us. If I hypnotize you and I tell you that you speak Martian, and you know all the buzzes, clicks, and whistles that make the Martian language the amazing language that it is, and you and I are conversing in Martian, the more laughing, the more clapping, the more cheering you hear, the better you're going to feel because you're doing such a great job. It's never you're doing this because you're an idiot. It's I'm going to hypnotize you. I'm going to make you feel good, put you in this situation. And when you do this, you're going to feel awesome doing it. Like you never see somebody meekly doing something. Everything they do with me, they do big because they feel proud of what they're doing.
I like that.
I was hypnotized with my mother at my college campus down at UNC Wilmington during freshman orientation week. And it was one of the best experiences of my life. And it's probably one of my most favorite memories that I have with my mom now that she's been gone for the last 6 years. I can always recall that and helped me to break out of my shell starting college 800 miles away from where I grew up.
What college was it?
UNC Wilmington in Wilmington, North Carolina, and it was summer of 1996.
I was going to say I was touring colleges then, so if it was a great experience, it was me. It's funny. People will often say to me, hey, you know, before I saw your show, I saw this other hypnotist in this other area. Was that you? Well, if you liked the show, it was me. If you didn't, no, it was Terry Stokes.
Yeah, because if Cheyenne didn't, then here comes 2 free tickets.
Yeah. Also because let's talk about hypnosis shows for a second. I actually teach classes on doing hypnosis on stage. And it's funny because I have the ability here in Vegas to do a very adult show. Comedy changes every 5 years. And what was funny 10 years ago wasn't funny 5 years ago. And now might be a little bit different. And 5 years from now will be totally different. And when I teach my students, because there are a lot of hypnotists who do the high school all-nighters, and that's like one of the biggest markets. I now have an affectionate term that I use for high school seniors who get hypnotized. Do you want to guess what that term is?
Oh, gosh. I don't know. Go ahead. What is it?
Child. Because they are. They're 16, they're 17, but they're children. I have had hypnotists tell me, oh, it's okay to do adult material in front of high school seniors. I said, okay, now instead of using the term high school seniors, say child and repeat that sentence to me. This was not me, but there was a hypnotist who was booked to do a college show, and it was a freshman orientation, and everybody was over it. He did an adult show, and part of his show involved everybody on stage basically having an orgasm. It was a funny show. Everybody laughed, whatever. School reporter said, hey, can I interview you for the paper? He said, yeah, sure. This reporter's first question was, so how exactly do you feel about making an 18-year-old girl separated from her family for the first time in front of a room full of strangers who she has to be with for the next 9 months, have a sexual experience in front of somebody?
Oh my God.
Brilliant question. Brilliant question. You have to learn. You have to look. You have to observe and just understand what situation are you doing something in. And yeah, just because you can do it doesn't mean you should. One of my mentors gave me a very valuable lesson. He said, people will laugh for two reasons. People will either laugh because they're pushing away since they're uncomfortable, or they'll laugh because they're enjoying something and they'll lean into it.
Right.
So as you're watching your audience, are they pushing away or are they leaning in? And if they're pushing away, the routine's got to change.
You have to constantly change to see what your guests are benefiting from, what they're having the most fun with, what are they comfortable with. It seems like you're always in tune with your audience, which
You have to be.
is amazing.
You 100% have to be. And here's the great thing about comedy. People talk about getting canceled. There's only one joke that will ever get you canceled. It's the joke that nobody laughs at. If people are laughing, sure, some people may not like what or why you're laughing. But if your crowd likes it, your crowd is going to come back and see it. If no one's laughing, that's all there is to it.
I think it speaks to the phrase, know your audience. I say this to my own children all of the time. What's appropriate to say here with us might not be appropriate to go and announce in the middle school cafeteria lunchtime. So as we talk about knowing our audience, can you tell us some of the biggest challenges for you starting out and getting your footing?
Okay, so starting out. And this is what I like about teaching hypnosis is because anytime you teach, you also have to reevaluate why you do things. And when hypnotists start, it's like they're forcing people to do something. And that one clear way to know you're not doing it right is if I have to apply any sort of pressure to get you to do in a hypnotic state what I want you to do, I shouldn't have asked you to do that. That's one of the biggest indicators is just when you give a suggestion, do people happily respond to it? And if so, that's great. And if they don't, then you realize you're doing something that isn't filling people with joy. Don't do that. You got to pay attention because 5 years ago I did this routine and oh my God, it went great, but it's not going so well now. Yeah, well, people's point of view have changed and that's not funny right now. So figure out what was funny in that routine, change it to something else. And one of the best examples of that is George Carlin. If you look at Carlin throughout his entire career, you see where he'll change as social views change.
So following up with that, I love your reference to Carlin. Were there any shows for you that went completely wrong that you could share?
So when I was first starting out doing like costume characters and doing clown shows and magic shows for kids' birthday parties, the company that I started working for, their filing system was a mess. And they paid me because I was young and I would do anything for 50 cents. They paid me to file all of the old contracts. But this company would follow up with all their clients. So I got to read all the feedback from all of my shows. And I got to find out what clients liked and what they didn't like. When I was starting, I talked a mile a minute. It's funny. What I would do in 20 minutes in a show back then would take me an hour and a half to do now because literally there wasn't a breath in the whole thing almost. I had to learn to be engaging and I had to learn to work in difficult situations. Corporate show, everybody's drunk. I've had to do shows where I've been booked to perform in basically the size of a living room with too many people in it and no sound system. And the thing with performing is there's always a way to hit the escape button or there's a way to learn from the experience and make sure you don't end up there again. And I was one of the idiots who instead of escaping, just went, keep sending me on the hard shows so I can learn
You brought up something earlier about how people have to change throughout their career based off of what people like and don't like. So, the past 4 or 5 years, our country has seen the roughest societal changes, especially the way comedy was presented. How did you deal with that? Did you have to tweak anything to fit your audiences more? Did you see the audience change throughout these few years?
So the pendulum always swings back and forth until we finally reach a moment where we all think we agree. And then the pendulum starts swinging back and forth on a whole nother topic. But yeah, a lot of stuff with sexuality. I've had to change in my show. A lot of the adult material I've had to change or modify in a way that more people would be comfortable with it. Going back to colleges, I don't perform at colleges much anymore because I'm 49. I shouldn't be at college. You know, I'm just being honest. How is a college kid who's a teen going to relate to me? There are plenty people out there who do a great job who the colleges will relate to. I've talked to a lot of college performers. I'm like, pull out anything that's sexually charged. Because when we went to college, sexual liberation was a thing, but we still didn't understand a lot. And now what we're understanding is a lot of these 18, 19-year-olds were going to college for the first time. They're away from their parents and they're away from the whatever bubble they've lived in. They don't know what their sexuality is and they're confused by it. And if you do something that makes them confront a part of their sexuality that they're not ready to confront, they're going to pull away from you in a really, really hard way and they're going to take it personal.
Right.
And they don't mean to do it in a way where they're attacking the comedian. What they're honestly saying is, hey, I have a wound here. I don't know what to do about this right now. And then we hit this part too, where, like I think we're close enough in age groups where we all grew up with the line of, well, I don't see color. Well, okay, but if I ignore color, then I ignore everything my friend has gone through by saying that experience doesn't happen. Sexuality. Oh, it doesn't matter if you're gay. Yeah, you know what? It does matter if you're gay because you've gone through stuff because of that. So it's not me saying I don't care what color you are. It's not me saying I don't care what sexual orientation you are. It's me saying, hey, I'm your friend and let me know what being comfortable means to you. But we're just reaching that point and we don't know how to deal with those answers all the time either.
And it's important to remind everyone that while we try to understand what people are going through today, we also need to recognize that older generations face challenges too. We need time to learn and grasp these differences. I really feel for comedians and people on both sides because for the past 20 years, audiences understood the humor and didn't take it personally. Now, with the new generation, there's a tendency to take things personally, which stems from being raised differently. You and I were raised in different ways, which shapes how we interpret things.
I also had to think about something. Somebody put this bug in my ear, which was America's never been great. Because you can point to any era you want in American history, and we can point out problems. But I do believe America has one piece of greatness, and that's today's children are trying to fix the problems their grandparents created. You can't fix the problems your parents created, you're too close. We can fix the mistakes from our grandparents. So when you look at what's actually getting fixed socially, our generation is fixing what our grandparents screwed up. The next generation are fixing what my parents screwed up. And then the generation after them will fix my mistakes.
I know you're helping people overcome their fears, and there's one story I'd love for you to share. It resonates with me because I'm personally scared of heights. While I'm okay with flying, the thought of jumping out of a plane absolutely terrifies me. You had met someone with a fear of flying and helped him overcome it. Could you share that story with us? And if you could help me conquer my fear enough to jump out of a plane, I'd gladly shake your hand.
Okay, well, so first of all, let's talk about phobias for a second. If you lived here in Las Vegas, and you know what? I'm sorry, Farrah, where do you live?
I'm in Tennessee, about an hour out of Nashville.
Okay, all right. So if you came to me because you had a phobia for snakes, there's some different ways to fix those phobias. And the reason I bring up snakes is here's the thing with phobias. If you live in Nashville, you don't really need to be afraid of snakes. On the other hand, if you live in the Amazon, you better be really damn aware of if there's a snake around. So there's a difference between rational and irrational fears. If something is a rational fear, I live in the Amazon, I am on a boat, poisonous snakes fall into my boat. Yes, you know what? You should have a very, very healthy fear of snakes. Flying. What are you afraid of? Why are you afraid of it? Generally speaking, there's an anxiety. Okay, the anxiety is easy to get you over. Now, if you're talking skydiving, it's hard for me as a hypnotist to say, yeah, I can hypnotize you to go skydiving. I don't like roller coasters. Don't. I hate that dropping feeling on roller coasters. And maybe it's because I fly too much. Maybe I just don't like the turbulence feeling. I don't like that dropping feeling. Now, I did have to go on a roller coaster when my niece was 9 because she really wanted to go on this roller coaster. And I had to go with her because I didn't want to project my fear onto her. Hated every minute of that 4.5 minutes. But
You were sweet, though.
the point of it is, why do you want to jump out of the plane? If you tell me you want to jump out of the plane because you want to achieve this goal, and I can tell you, you go with this reputable company, there's never been a fatality, there's never been an injury. Here's how you're going to do it. Here's how you're going to do it safely. And now we're going to use hypnosis to remove the anxiety. That can be done. On the other end of it, if you're like, yeah, I don't ever want to jump out of a plane. Well, you know what? You don't have to jump out of a plane. I can't think of any situation in my adult life where jumping out of a plane is going to be the right answer, especially in an involuntary manner.
My husband is a veteran of the 82nd Airborne, and he was a paratrooper. When we first met, we had gone to Carowinds, which is an amusement park, and the ripcord ride. You get buckled up together, and I never thought I could be the one to pull that ripcord, and I did. So I just feel that the next step is to jump out of a plane.
If what you want to do is get rid of the fear of heights, think about some things that you're grateful for, and then go to Nashville, go to the second floor of a building. And as you're looking out over the streets, don't even think about how high it is. Once again, don't think about what you not want to do. Instead, just look out the second floor window and think about things you're grateful for. Think of things that you enjoy, and just keep going up one floor and doing it until it gets easier and easier to do that until you're up on the 15th, 16th floor, looking down and only thinking about positive things. It's creating that little behavioral changes while you're thinking about things that you're grateful for. Although I did see a great video of one of the ride operators for those ripcord rides where he hits the button and then it takes off in 3 seconds, but he uses that 3 seconds to go, oh, wait a minute, I don't think you're harnessed incorrectly. It's hilarious. Brilliant. And it's just like the video of him doing this over and over to different people.
I've seen that one. It's the guy that's in the Appalachia area.
Yeah.
Yeah. And he does it great.
Perfectly.
He should get an Academy Award for his acting because he sealed the deal on those people pissing their pants for sure.
And it's that's exactly what you want out of that ride, especially when you have like the teenagers and go like, oh, this isn't going to scare me. Boom. Wait, what? Yeah, it's if you can throw somebody off for a second in that moment, it does put the thrill back in the thrill ride.
I love it.
So I just wanted to throw in there that Farrah and I spoke about, we both have the same fear of heights. And I like how you put it into irrational versus rational. For myself, after my divorce was finalized, I was feeling so empowered that I decided I was going to jump out of a plane. I was going to go skydiving. And I convinced my friend, who happens to be deaf, to come with me to jump out of the plane. The two of us were going to do it together. Well, I had to be her interpreter. Now, when you interpret in American Sign Language or any foreign language, you retain none of the information. You're just taking it in and spitting it right back out. So once we got up into the plane, I told the professional strapped to my back, you're just going to have to kind of push both of us out of here because I remember nothing about what was said. But after I did that, I was grateful that I had come out the other side of this pretty lengthy and awful divorce proceedings that lasted 22 months. And since then, I told Farrah, I took my father for his 80th birthday skydiving with my soon-to-be husband. The three of us did that together. And I'm going to get Farrah to come with us.
Of course, Of course, your deaf friend who thought she was only going to the plane to watch you may have another opinion of what happened at the end of that day. But
So let's talk about some of your pre-show rituals. Do you have any superstitions?
yes, of course. Of course, I'm a performer. I have watched the most devout of atheists have their superstitions before they go out on stage. Any performer who tells you otherwise is lying to your face. For me, it's always like a version of a couple of jumping jacks and a prayer. And the prayer is a little bit of focus as well. The prayer is usually just based on, forgive me for all I've done, help me out there, help me to exceed everybody's expectations, including my own. My wife is also in my show, so I also, thank you for her. Help me to remember how much beauty she brings into my life. And it's a prayer not just to God. It's a prayer to just go, everything that's happened until this moment doesn't matter now. Now let's go out there and do this one thing and have fun doing it.
It's the gratitude. I
Yeah.
I love that. But how many jumping jacks? Is there a number?
No, I don't have that version of OCD.
Okay, just just checking.
So
I
there
do.
isn't a count, but there is I do have to do this.
There's an urge to do the
Yep.
jumping jacks. Yes,
Yeah.
yes. And how did the Vegas opportunity come about?
So the Vegas opportunity, I believe in the butterfly effect. Change one thing, change it all. What I used to tell people is that I was walking into a restaurant and I saw a guy walking out of the restaurant wearing a Hypnosis Unleashed t-shirt. I asked him if he'd ever been to the show. He said, yeah, kind of. He was the son of one of the hypnotists, and he actually filled in for his dad at the show. With his permission, in the book, I was able to write the true story. The true story is I was walking into a meeting and he was walking out of one. I did not meet him because I was in rehab. I didn't meet him because I decided to go to a meeting. I met him because I decided to get healthy. And had I never decided to get healthy, I would never have met him. His dad was doing the show one night. He invites me out. His dad brought me up on stage to do a routine because his dad was very kind about doing stuff like that. And then his dad invited me back and we got along well. Now, mind you, I had just moved to Vegas a few months before this. I had over 15 years experience traveling the world, and they let me become an intern. For the next 6 months, Michael Johns and Terry Stokes owned the show. For the next 6 months, I interned for them. I helped them redo their promo. I assisted on stage. I sat people. I took tickets. I sold tickets. I did anything because I had a lot of experience, but I didn't know what Vegas meant. And after 6 months, they went, well, what do you want for all of this? I said, I want what you're not using. And they knew what I meant. I wanted their dark night. The show was 6 nights a week. I wanted it to go 7 nights a week, and I wanted it to be the 7th night. And they gave me that opportunity. And about a year and a half later, Terry retired from Vegas. About a year after that, the Harmon Theater was closing, and Michael decided to retire from Vegas. And they gave me the name and let me carry it forward. And I've carried it ever since then, since like 2012 or 2013. But to answer the biggest question of how did the Vegas opportunity really happen, I had to sit Terry and Michael down one day for lunch because I'd been doing the show now for 6 months, okay? So I'd interned for 6 months, and now for 6 months, I'm doing the show every Thursday and whenever else they want to take a day off. I said, why me? Just about every hypnotist has come through these doors and wanted what I wanted. Why me? And they said, you're the first person to ask us questions, not to give us answers.
Just gave me chills.
Same.
And in my career, I've seen it. Seen all these performers who want to come up to successful performers and tell them what they know. What's funny is, I don't care what field you're in. If you walk up to somebody who you feel is very successful in their field and you say, I'm doing this, I want to be doing what you're doing, and you listen to the answers, over 85% of professionals who are at the top of whatever field you think they're at the top of, they know there's more room at the top than there will ever be people to fill those positions. And if you're really willing to listen, they'll give you their experience and their knowledge.
I think that goes for life in general today, too.
Yeah.
To be
Oh,
honest,
yeah.
there's not enough people listening. There's just people talking. That's all I've heard the past few years. Stop always talking and listen. Just listen.
There are plenty of times I've had somebody come up to me and go, hey, you've done this in your career. I want to do this. How did you do it? And I'll go, oh, well, I did ABC. And they go, oh, well, I want to do REQ.
Mm.
But what'd you do next? Well, after ABC, I did DEF. Oh, yeah, I'm going to do Z Blue 7. okay, I'm done talking now because you've got your way. You're going to want to do it. Best of luck. I hope it works.
Yep. And that's all you can do is wish them well. And then maybe, just maybe, they might come back around and say, I'd like to sit down and hear what you have to say, Kevin.
And it blows my mind how many great professionals always happy to share that with you if you're
Mhm.
willing to listen. I've asked a lot of people a lot of hard questions to get real answers. And if you do it with sincerity, people will share that experience with you. And it's amazing. The 15% who are absolute jerks just taught me I never want to be that person, which is
Well,
valuable too.
very valuable. I commend you on how you're handling your life now, Kevin, from where you were. And thank you for everything you've taught me in just this little time that I've had to speak with you.
I think we've all said giving people grace and giving people the space to ask the questions, listen to them, answer them to the best of your abilities. And what they do with that is on them.
So, what's next for you in terms of show and advocacy?
I'm actually really thrilled. You can go to hypnosisunleashed.com. I get to do the show 5 nights a week. I get to do it with my wife, who has also built her own show. She has built a show for elementary schools. It's MissFairyG.com. Originally, what she was teaching in her show was social emotional learning. But then she had a moment, and it was great because I was there to be her roadie. And she has a moment in her show where a magic trick, quote unquote, goes wrong. And all of a sudden, there's this donkey sound. A donkey puppet appears and starts yelling. She goes, oh, that's my donkey voice. That's that voice in my head that tells me I can't do something or I'm not good enough. Does anybody here have a voice like that? Not only did all the kids raise their hand, but so did all the teachers and administrators. And went, oh my God, you just found something big. She found a way to teach elementary school kids about negative self-talk and how to change it from a donkey voice to a unicorn voice. So not only does she help me in my show and to keep building Hypnosis Unleashed into what it is, but I'm also very, very thankful to help her with hers as well. And of course, go to hypnosisunleashed.com. You can go to deepintomyeyes.com, which is where you can get the book from. And that's my journey from victim to Vegas headliner.
I really enjoy hearing about the work that not only you are doing, but also your wife is doing. I have 2 kids, my son and my stepson, both in middle school. It's so nice to hear people who are advocates for children as well as for adults. So with that said, Kevin, what would you tell someone listening to us right now who is in their darkest moment?
Find someone you can trust. Find anyone you can trust. And just tell them you need to talk. You need to tell somebody what's going on. When you're in your darkest moment, you're not making the right decisions for yourself. Tell somebody. Reach out to anyone. If the problem is at home, reach out to somebody at school. If the problem's at school, reach out to somebody at home. If the problem's in both places, go walk to the fire station. Go anywhere you feel safe. Tell someone how you're feeling. There is help out there. There is a lot of help out there. All you need to do is let somebody you trust know you need that help.
On a personal note, because I too have experienced abuse, Kevin's advice really resonates with me. It's vital to reach out and connect with someone you trust. You don't have to face it alone. And let's not forget about his incredible wife and her impactful show. She's truly making a difference. We're all about having these necessary hard discussions, speaking the truth and finding positive paths forward together. I'll make sure we include all of Kevin's details in the show notes so you know where to find him. Pick up his book, Deep Into My Eyes. And if you're in Vegas or have a vacation planned to Vegas, we urge you to visit hypnosisunleashed.com to get tickets for a magical time. I'll pass it off to Cheyenne to close the show.
Absolutely. Kevin, I really want to thank you for taking us on this powerful and informative journey today. Your willingness to share the darkest chapters of your story while showing others there's light ahead, it's truly remarkable. You've proven that our past doesn't define our future. The way you've transformed your pain into purpose, helping others find their own strength through both entertainment and healing is exactly why we share these stories here on Social Disruption. To our listeners out there who might be fighting their own battles right now, whether it's abuse, addiction, mental health struggles, or any challenge that feels insurmountable. We hope Kevin's story reminds you, as he said, as we've said, you are not alone and your story isn't over yet. Thank you so much, Kevin, for your time today with us.
And
Yes.
as a good friend once told me, my history is not my destiny. Can do it.
Thank you again, Kevin, for giving us your time. We look forward to catching up with you in the future and seeing the amazing work you're doing with your show and advocacy. Well, that's a wrap on another inspiring episode of Social Disruption. Don't ghost us. Follow our chemtrails on social media at Social Disruption Pod on Instagram, Threads, Facebook, and TikTok. Over on X at Raw Disruptor.
Spread the chaos. Share this show with your crew. Don't just keep it to yourself. Disrupt someone else's day.
Hell yeah. And we're booking guests who've got something to say, whether it's expertise or wild experiences in world news, entertainment, dating, addictions, mental health.
Or our Day in the Life segment. We want people who make the world tick. DoorDash drivers, plumbers, first responders, retail workers, restaurant, hairstylists. We're done with celebrity sob stories.
Let's hear from you why you chose your path, what's broken, and what the world needs to know about your grind. So until next time, stay bold,
Stay unapologetic.
stay disruptive.
Well, I hope you had yourselves a time.
Next time on Social Disruption, Farrah and Cheyenne are diving deep into the UK grooming scandal and how the UK government tried to bury for years, but is finally exploding in the press. We'll break down the latest bombshells, revisit the Rotherham child exploitation case, and expose how this ties into the global war on human trafficking. Oh, and they're not stopping there. They will be cracking open the dirtiest secrets in Hollywood, too. No filters. No bullshit. Just the truth. Tune in. It's about to get disruptive.